Hello, hello. Blackjack here with a little pre-roll. This video talks about the new RWBY designs, obviously, but I've gone ahead and split it up into two quick parts. I recorded my initial thoughts the same day the designs were released, so that was all hear the moment, first impression kind of stuff. Now that a few days have passed and we've gotten to sit with the designs for a little while, the second segment will include a little of that, plus a correction or two, as well as some details that people pointed out, say on Twitter or Tumblr. And pardon the second intro, but here's my initial reactions based on my immediate thoughts, hurriedly typed into a phone while I was watching the panel. Hello, hello. Blackjack here again, and fresh off of RTX. I actually sat in on the RWBY panel, and today I'll be going over the new looks we saw for Team RWBY. We also saw a little work-in-progress clip of what I assume to be episode 1, which showed that the next season starts about 3 minutes after where the last season ended. That meant we still don't know exactly when they'll be getting these new outfits, so I'm excited to see where they actually end up getting them. They also didn't show off any of the outfits for the other characters, so I guess I can really only talk about RWBY. Hopefully we will actually see some new threads for Juniper, what's left of them, Oscar, and Crow. And for once, they started in reverse order, so we'll actually start with Yang this time. Right off the bat, we can already see that Yang has her shine back. As opposed to the darker, more somber expression she had last time around, Yang is burning brighter than ever in a glowing return to form. Per the panel, Yang's new outfit was based on aviation and pilot style clothes, a nice spin on her biker theme she's had previously. I wonder just how much this actually means, as you may remember I mentioned in my video on Yang that she was shooting for a pilot's license in Grim Eclipse. Makes me wonder if they're actually going to explore that a bit more, seeing as they commandeered an Airbus and all. Even going all the way back, Yang rocked a pair of aviators, so she's always had a bit of that spirit in her. And going off of the pilot theme, Yang's jacket is specifically a bomber jacket. It looks similar to other ones, being based on military gear worn by pilots back in World War I. And by a certain fighting game character that I feel may have inspired Yang's latest design. Are you okay? The jackets were usually lined with fur because early fighter planes weren't really insulated and they were pretty cold flying around up in the sky. You can see that Yang's has some fur on it, and she also looks to have brought back her scarf look. This scarf, however, as opposed to her original one, is specifically tied off. This look also became popular thanks to pilots who wore scarves to combat the chilly air and to prevent chafing when they look around in the skies. Same goes for bikers. They use them to cover their mouths to block the wind, that sort of thing. And fun fact, it's for these reasons that we see a lot of Kamen Rider / Power Rangers wearing these sorts of scarves. A lot of Japanese heroes in general have the cool scarves, especially ones based on Sentai like Kamen Rider. Heck, one look at Platinum Games, the makers of Wonderful 101 and Beautiful Joe, want to provide that sort of info. And if not, look at Hideki Kamiya, who works with Platinum. All Yang really needs to complete the look is a cool transforming watch. Though I guess Member Sonic will do. In fact, it looks like she actually has 2 of them, which is worth noting. We haven't actually seen her with the other bracelet since she lost it back in Volume 3, so maybe she gets a new one, or somehow recovers the other. I imagine that'll probably be dealt with pretty fast, but it's interesting to see. As for her actual outfit, we follow the pilot theme and put a bit more into the military-esque. In fact, though we don't get a great look of it, it looks a bit like her manga outfit, which had camo print, sort of military. And it's kind of a jumper with a lot of belts, and with less focus on the butt cape. It also looks a bit like a proper flight suit, adjusted for anime, albeit I don't think a big gold belt buckle is usually allowed for that sort of thing. I also don't really have proof, but for some reason I just feel it's sleeveless or at least short sleeve, though that might just be because of the manga. And in addition to the miniature butt cape, we can see that Yang sort of combines her 3 main looks. Her pants have zippers, letting her adjust them. On one leg, she elected to keep them super short, much like her Volume 1 outfit's short shorts. The other has them zipped up, fitting with her Volume 5 outfit's full-on pants, and they also have very RWBY-esque leather garters, a bit like her Hunter outfit. All for the hashtag aesthetic. Related to that, we've actually seen a similar look in 2 places, one maybe a bit of a stretch. Yang's father, Tai Yang, wears shorts, However, when he was younger, they actually went all the way down to his shoes. Considering he didn't really change the rest of his outfit, I've seen people theorize, if that term really applies here, that he's wearing the same pants, they just unzip like some kind of outdoorsy pants do. It's also kind of a dad look, fitting with his cool dad persona. The other place we've seen this is a bit more of a direct comparison, and it makes me think. Considering a few things, it kind of looks a bit like Vernal, doesn't it? And considering Vernal was the fake spring maiden to cover for Raven, I'll say I've seen a theory or two that Yang is being set up as the next spring, and leave it there. And much like I predicted, here we see a bit of a return to form, with Yang shown smiling, and in a much more flirtatious outfit befitting her earlier personality. Her smiling clothes are a stark contrast to last season, especially the posters, so it looks like the fire is back in her heart, or on her ways? No, that sounds strange, but nah. Moving on to Blake. Oh my god, the Maniacs actually did it. Blake's voice actress Erin Zach actually hinted at it a while ago, but Blake cut her hair. Now it's more of a bobcat. Was that intentional? Another thing I mentioned in Yang's episode was that the girl's hair was very important to their designs, making up a good portion of their silhouette and somewhat defining their character. Yang's ponytail helped signify her depression after all, especially combined with her earlier love of her hair. And now Blake has a bob cut. It's a radical, rarely seen change for a character to do something like this, and with no small amount of significance. Yang's ponytail was a shock considering, but Blake cutting off most of her long hair is a dramatic upgrade of even that. It's also something Dishwasher somewhat predicted with his RWBY 3.0 line, because he's very good at predicting things like that. It's also not too dissimilar from a Mother Collie. A character cutting one's hair is always pretty significant, especially this late into a series. In most other series, characters usually keep to more or less the same look, as what makes them recognizable and what was associated with them. For example, in BlazBlue Cross-Type Battle, we see the girls and their Volume 1 outfits, because that's what you see when you start the series, that's what you've associated them for all of this time. In Eastern media, cutting one's hair is representative of a new beginning, or a major change in one's life. You can see this illustrated pretty well in Disney's Mulan, where she cuts her hair to help her disguise herself as a man, same with Korra cutting her hair after a series of hardships and kind of losing herself. Blake's major life event is no doubt the death of Adam. Someone who had, in so many ways, changed and ruined her life has now been defeated forever, and she's free to live without a shadow looming over her. Of course, the years she suffered were present in her hair, grown out over the years to now be shed. Blake is free to live on with her new family. As for her new outfit, I think Erin put it best. When asked to describe Volume 7 in one word, she said, and then repeated during the current panel, leather. Immediately, I find this a much better and more emblematic outfit than her previous one, seeing it looks a lot more fantasy and a lot more RWBY. Whereas her previous jacket was pure white, this has some nice patterns on it, and it also kind of almost maybe inverts the cat face she had on her first outfit, with the cat suit, and the black plates loosely shaping her bust much like the white part did on her first outfit. Also, layers. Again, she looks to be wearing a cat suit. A very Remnant-esque jacket with long tails and a big old belt, and a small backpack for her weapon. Something interesting about that is that Gamble's shroud is complete, whereas it was previously broken in the fight with Adam. No doubt she'll have it fixed, of course, but it looks the same. I'm interested to see if this is some kind of fake-out. And overall, it doesn't really tell you as much as Yang's gear, but it has short hair, so 10 on 10. Hey, you like belts? Because we got belts. Weiss has a lot of belts. That's not quite what I was expecting for this design. To the point where I wonder if she'll be changing clothes at the behest of her father. The first thing of note is that Weiss changed her hair, though without a full cut like Blake. She's instead styled into a massive braid. I'll have to see it in model form, but it looks a bit longer than I feel it should. It also compares with an even more royal-looking tiara and earrings, both in set with rubies. Interesting. And somehow managing to look even more like a princess, Weiss is sporting a poofy jacket with Victorian-esque sleeves and full-length opera gloves combined with a very flowy dress. I am very interested to see if there's any sort of explanation for this look, as it feels like it's a bit too much for her, honestly. I said in my Weiss video that it looks like her Volume 4 outfit was chosen by her father, but this looks more like something that the perfect, proper step-in-line heiress would be forced to wear. It looks beyond royal, with the combat skirt being replaced with waves of flowing cloth and poofy sleeves. I would almost guess that this is Weiss's version of Yang's depression outfit, as something being subject to change in the future. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I can easily see Weiss failing to stand up for herself in front of her father, and somehow this is the result of that. It doesn't really feel like her stepping up and becoming the huntress she wishes to be, shown by the lack of a combat skirt. The only thing I can really think that makes it look like a huntress is the excessive belts. The rest of it feels, well, kind of strange to say, but fairy tale. Oh, and she still has all the all-red cylinders. Weird note about that. And first and not least, we have RWBY, with slightly more variety this time around. Like Yang, it's a bit of a mix of her other outfits, having the corset separate from the top, but covering her cleavage to account for the colder weather. Her sleeves are gray like the Slayer outfit, and even the gloves can be loosely linked with the ones from her manga outfit. Her hair is also considerably livelier and spikier, a bit like Crow's. It might just be the art, but I'm interested to see if she keeps the look with the more wild hair. It's pretty common for anime protagonists to have that kind of spiky look. It was also specifically stated that she's a bit bulkier now, her legs and arms filling in a bit more, so now she actually fits into her boots a bit better. No longer are they big and clunky, instead being sleek, steel-toed boots that make her look significantly more adult and maybe a bit more useful in a fight. The biggest change, however, is her skirt. Going with the more adult look, it's a lot shorter, less floofy, and open on one side to reveal that RWBY's wearing spats. While that would be pretty minor on other characters, I feel that this really shows that RWBY is coming into her own and growing up to be the huntress she wants to be. She's ditched the far more childish skirt and substituted for something far more mature looking, and adding in a little womanly charm while also returning to her tights. Oh, and belts. It's no wonder that RWBY ended up crossing with Blade Blue. Just look at Ragna, and Guilty Gear about the same developer's soul. Match made in heaven right there. Once more though, RWBY's outfit is a bit safe. Aside from the skirt and the gloves, it's kinda just color choices, which is a bit of a shame. I really hope that one day RWBY gets, like, a dramatic outfit change, as she's currently pigeonholed by her skirt and corset. Sure, the minor changes say things, but it could say a lot more even if she wore a t-shirt. That'd say a lot more than her having another corset. And as long as I'm talking RWBY, a fun detail revealed in After the Fall is that RWBY makes her own clothes. You can't really find a cape like that in a boutique, after all, even in Remnant. And that would be the end of my immediate reactions. And I really hope we do see the other characters change outfits, they just haven't been revealed yet. Crow's been rocking the same bowling shirt for months at this point, and I'd really like to see some more meaningful outfits from Ren and Nora. Oscar gets a pass since canonically he ran away to shop less than a week ago or so, but I would never say never say no to more outfits. And I guess this ended up being a bit long for a full roundup. That means I have at least one more RWBY video in me to wrap up the more interesting side characters. Join me next time as I go over a couple of, honestly just kind of random, I'll pick and choose the best ones. Blackjack out. Not. Moving on to the second segment, again now that we've had a few days, I thought I'd go back and check out the designs once again and go over a couple of extra details people noticed. Starting off with RWBY, the only thing I missed is that her hair looks to be staying in the more wild style we saw in her image. It's not just part of the art style or anything like that. I wasn't 100% sure if that was just the art or whatever it was, but yeah, I went over changing hairstyles, and RWBY especially is kind of strange considering she's the main character. And she hasn't had quite as much of a arc as Blake. Yeah, she's grown as a leader, but something a bit more dramatic was probably a bit necessary. That's probably why she's got a much smaller, basic kind of cut, as opposed to the drastic change that Blake went through. With this, though, it means that everybody's had a new hairstyle, though RWBY's is probably just for variety over development. She's grown in the past few volumes again, but while the hairstyle doesn't really have any specific meaning that I can see, though the spikier hair is usually associated with shonen protagonists. Another thing I noticed is that her cape looks to be new, or at least patched up. A detail I forgot to mention in her Volumes 4 look is that her cape was ragged and torn on the end. An easy reflection of her more serious personality, her arduous journey with the rest of Ranger, and also probably a nod to Crow, who's got a very ragged cape, showing his experience. I briefly mentioned it, but I actually managed to finish after the fall over the weekend, and I already mentioned that confirms that RWBY sews her own clothes. This implies now that she's reached Atlas, a more defined location as opposed to being on the road, she fashioned a new cape to go along with her new fashion choices. That's probably because she's just in a proper settlement and actually has access to proper tools and all that sort of stuff. Another thought I had upon some dwelling was that RWBY might be improving as a fighter. I said way back in the early volumes that RWBY lacks physical hand-to-hand skills and is a bit useless without Crescent Rose. We dealt with that a little bit, her getting some training with Osben, but now RWBY sports fingerless gloves and steel-toed boots. It wouldn't really surprise me if those are more for just style, as both would be good in a fight, but I would hope that we see maybe some development with their semblance. The panel confirmed that we'll be revisiting semblances, and maybe RWBY will develop hers a bit more. They said, well, they didn't really say anything specifically, but maybe a bit more detail, maybe a bit more lore on how they work, differences, that sort of stuff. I expressed previously on Reddit, in my video for her, that I'd love to see her learn to use it on specific body parts, enabling her to do such as rapid punches or rapid kicks. I can easily imagine RWBY doing her own version of an Aura Rose. Or maybe taking advantage of the focus on her legs for some Chun-Li lightning kicks. I still do think it's a bit safe and doesn't really add too much, and aside from the open slit on the side of the skirt, you kind of lose the more mature elements, though that is just accounting for the climate. The stockings and the cleavage being covered is probably just for warmth, so it's understandable at least. Weiss, I still need to see in the engine. I do stand by my previous thoughts in that it's a bit of a step back character development-wise, at least outfit, that sort of thing. She looks more like a princess than ever, is what I'm saying. I'm not the only one to theorize that she'll get it because, say, she fails to stand up for herself. It doesn't look like something Weiss the Huntress would be if she wants to actually embrace being her true self. Suspension of disbelief, but that doesn't really look like a combat skirt now, does it? One counter to this is that people have pointed out that her gloves may be based on Winter's. After all, Winter is Weiss's mentor, and is a big inspiration in her being a huntress. That said, I don't really see it. Winter's gloves are considerably shorter, looking something a bit more professional, something a professional would wear. Though they don't really seem to have any analogous versions to, say, military gloves or anything like that. Weiss's are more opera-style gloves, stretching up her arms. They're known to be worn by royals, singers, and fashion models. Definitely not for combat. Of course, Pyrrha had a similar pair of gloves, but we went over my thoughts on her last time. In fact, she looks so much like a queen that she made it at the top of the trending list on Twitter. Is this that stan culture that people are talking about? I'll reiterate that I feel that this is Weiss's version of Yang's Don't Give a Shni outfit, and that I feel it's something that she'll wear when she isn't herself. When depressed, Yang wore boring, basic clothes, and because she lost her light. I theorize that Weiss will be forced to wear this after, say, failing to stand up for herself, or possibly even in a plot of some kind to trick her father into thinking she's back to being his little doll. Though, all of that said, one thing does put a bit of a hole in my theory. Twitter user Keith Montalvo pointed out that Weiss looks to have a different logo, one that isn't the Shni Dust Company logo. That would be a pretty important distinction for her, most of all. A new logo means that she'd be breaking away from her father and her history, which would imply that she is breaking away, which goes against my thoughts. And just because I'm me, I went ahead and checked Weiss's concept art. And no, it didn't really appear with her other beta logos. It marginally resembles that one in the middle, but only with the pip coming off in the valley shape. Doesn't really seem to have any basis on anything previously. The rubies in her jewelry also make me think. White Rose has doused the flames with this fuel, But if it means anything, it could mean that Weiss wants to be part of her team. I doubt it means anything specifically shipping-wise, for the same reasons Yang's pants didn't have the bumblebee, but it'd go with my idea of the soft rebellion that I mentioned in her video. After all, her pony's tail is still off-center, even while braided, but the rubies may be her middle finger saying, I am part of Team RWBY and I will fight where I can. We'll see if this is directed at our team, or maybe someone a bit more specific, come the volumes. Moving on to Blake, it's canonically called the bisexual Bob now, apparently. That said, I don't really see much else that I missed. People are in love with it, but there's not really anything that I didn't go over already. It's very RWBY, and it's very black and white. And those boots just keep getting higher and higher now, don't they? Yeah, a bit of a shame, but it doesn't look like there's too many details about the design itself. It's more focused on the hair. So I'll take this moment to say that I'm worked the groupie on these designs, making 3 different versions of an outfit, then mixing and matching the best parts. Thanks to Tumblr user The Sassiest Color for compiling the concept art panel info. Said post also mentions that the Volume 2 designs were all just Monty messing around. That would definitely explain Weiss and Blake being almost completely lifted off of real things, as well as Yang having such a Yang design. And speaking of Yang, it shows my favoritism again, but I kind of went over all of the details already, thanks to me staring at her design a bit too much. She's back, she's hot, and she's ready to punch something again. This one is still my favorite purely because, once again, it tells you a lot about Yang. I don't know why she always gets the most evocative, but this outfit lets you know exactly who she is and builds on her character arc of relighting her fire, as evidenced by her lighting the fire in the portrait. Though the second Empress Celica still makes me think. Someone on Twitter suggested that it was RWBY's present that she got Yang at the start of Volume 6, but that does make me wonder why she didn't give it to her at any point during the time period. Would have been kind of useful in quite a few situations. The only thing is about this outfit is that I'm interested to see a clearer view of it. It suffers a bit from her arm being in front of her chest, which obscures a good part of the actual outfit. I also wonder if she'll have any sort of logo on the back of the jacket. Bomber jackets, and biker jackets especially, are well known for having large, intricate logos on the back of them. Knowing RWBY, it wouldn't surprise me to see something sick back there, though I can also see them passing on it completely just because of Yang's hair. It's going to be in the way most of the time. And that about does it for my post-RTX reflections. It's also a shame that, at least at the time of recording, they didn't release any high-quality solo images, as I would have loved to show more than just some blurry screenshots, and the group shot. Oh well. Hopefully in the future, we'll see a bit more from hopefully John, Ren, and Nora, Crow, and Oscar. They're a bit overdue for a new design. Well, maybe not Oscar, but I wouldn't say no. Blackjack out. Again.